maybe acknowledging that you've got the pain and then saying, okay, why am I in this particular point? And then how do I move forward to prevent this from ongoing and reoccurring to the point that I actually then become debilitated with this? But I think that the problem with that is then we're not very good at knowing when ourselves need to take a step back and when we need to rest.
Hi, I'm Lennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. And today we have a fantastic topic that I think is really important, regardless of where you live in this world, because I know that we're an international podcast and everybody listens. And that is talking about how to maneuver the healthcare system, and in particular, the hospital system, as a woman over 40, a midlife woman, how to make sure you're getting the right services, what kinds of questions to ask, and the kinds of things you want to look out for, basically developing your clinical wisdom. And today we have with us Sharon Nielsen. Sharon Nielsen is an RN who has spent many years in the healthcare environment. She is now working on her brand, a holistic women's wellness brand, guiding women 40 and beyond to reclaim their vitality and reset their nervous system and reconnect to the sacred truth of who they are. And Sharon and I had a great conversation about her 30 years of experience as a registered nurse and the clinical wisdom and the deeply intuitive feminine approach she has to healing. And I'm so excited to have her here. Welcome, Sharon, to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. It's great to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Linus. I'm very excited. This will be a great conversation, I think.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about you and how you segued from traditional medicine as an RN for 30 years to taking a more holistic approach, using your clinical background to help women during this really pivotal time in their lives.
Yeah, I guess it's very interesting when I still work in the hospital system. So I'm still doing a project where we are based. So I've got a background in emergency, critical care, project management and trauma. And I'm now helping with surgery-based type issues in regard to patient flow within the emergency department. So I'm sure, as in the States, when people access an emergency department, it becomes very busy and it becomes clogged. So part of our job is really in regards to going and prioritizing who we need to see from a surgical perspective, and then like working out, do they really need to come into hospital right now, or can we send them home and bring them back for a later date for surgery? So if you consider people like coming in for appendicitis, for instance, or maybe you need your gallbladder out, or maybe you've had a hernia that's an issue. And women in particular, I think, deal a lot with diverticulitis. That seems to be something that is very common, particularly with women in mid-age, because of, and this is only anecdotally through my experience, but I think women often hold a lot of stress in their gut and that they carry this through. So the diverticulitis can be like that physical representation of a stress response that's occurring. And so they get these physical ailments that they then present in the emergency department. I guess the link to myself was the fact that I feel like I've always been quite proactive about my own health. Like I've always been someone who's conscious of my diet. I've been a regular exerciser. But I went through quite a difficult divorce, of which I was still working full time and all of the rest of it. And I have two girls who are beautiful, but I didn't realize how much stress I was holding within my own nervous system because I thought I was all over it. As I think many women are in our generation, we're very high functioning. We multitask almost subconsciously. And it's because that the world demands more. We have more connectivity, there is more technology, life is keep changing. And as a personality, I think that we naturally thrive on challenge. We love to learn. We love to be on top of everything. But I think that the problem with that is then we're not very good at knowing when ourselves need to take a step back and when we need to rest. So this became very evident to me because I went through my divorce and all the rest of it, and I was still in that period post-divorce where your kids haven't quite got out of child support or anything. So you're still trying to negotiate with this person until you finally financially don't have to have anything to do with them. And I didn't realize, because then I was also applying to do my nurse practitioner work, and it's a master's work. And I was just doing all sorts of things that I just had no idea how stressed I was until one day I had a crux where I was supposed to go to a girlfriend's birthday actually, and I had a phone call and I just quietly decided that I was at crossroads. So I knew where the trajectory of my life already was going because I had been living that path. But I also then went, you know what, like nothing is going to change unless I make the change. Like I physically had to make the change. And so I just went, okay, I'm going to go left now instead of going right up the road that I knew. And so I then just went, you know what, like I am not the only person that has to deal with this kind of stuff. And there has to be a better way of living life. And I'm sure that as women come together and we share our knowledge, I wanted to create a community where women were needing to come together, that I could educate and support in proactive care and being preventative and being aware of the issues that are occurring, because I went, yeah, I know all this. Yep, I'm all over the top of it. But it wasn't until I actually went and did some restorative yoga training that I actually realized that I had quite a substantial physical breakthrough in that my whole nervous system just broke down. So I had a real physical kind of release, like almost spiritual kind of, in that I had no idea how wired I was and how protected I'd become of myself, and then trying to manage around it. If you visualize a turtle in a shell and we're that little turtle body inside this hard shell, but the hard shell is now very invisible for us. That day really felt like I broke my shell. And then it was like almost all this clarity came to me. And I just thought, wow, we're such clever human beings, and yet we trap ourselves because we're trying to protect ourselves. And we've become so resilient at dealing with life and just getting through that this bit has become something that, from a personal perspective, I felt like if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't understand the importance of space, that I have to give myself space, that I have to plan life. My self-care becomes almost a priority because I'm still working full-time, trying to run the business. I have a daughter that lives with me. I'm trying to still go to the gym and eat well and do all of the things. And then I get to the end of the week and go, oh my God, I don't want to talk to anyone.
And that's so common. You mentioned something that was very interesting. You mentioned that a lot of times in the ER setting, you have women that come in the midlife who are complaining about something that was very common, and you think it's somewhat stress related. And the interesting thing about that is that when you go into ED or ER, whatever you call it, and because of the pains you're having, let's say, and it's really by a stress factor, or more specifically hormonal factors, very rarely do they come at you with the idea that it's hormonally related. Yes. Completely different direction. So what kinds of things do women need to be saying to the doctor when they get there in that emergency situation to get them to have that aha moment that let's approach this maybe from a more hormonal perspective and not just taking a look at the symptoms, but maybe not, I know they can't go all the way to causation. They're not going to do that. You begin to look in a different direction.
I think that would require the entire medical system to review itself. But I do think from a female perspective, I think women need to become a bit more in tune with their bodies. I think that the thing is that in saying what I've described, often we're running very high and almost disconnected from our bodies. So it's not until you have pain, which is your body talking to you. And what I talk about in my coaching is almost like the eternal her, your her that's talking, your little goddess that's in there, that's talking to you and just saying to you, you have to stop. So people don't seem to physically even It's really interesting because the doctors will always come and we'll look at how long you've had your symptoms for. Has this happened before? Have you seen your GP before? What has gone on and what's led up to this? But I know when I go back and talk to them as the registered nurse, as the clinical nurse consultant who's saying to them, what's been going on? How have you been for the last, say, 3 months in life? There's all this stuff that just comes out, which makes sense.
You mentioned about women getting to know their bodies better. And you're right. We are so busy doing all the time. We're human doings instead of being human beings, sometimes stopping and just being and basically checking in with ourselves and saying, okay, what's really going on? And it seems like to me that if we took more of an opportunity to do that, we wouldn't necessarily be going to the ED.
Yes.
We'd be taking our journals that we've been keeping, right, of the different symptoms and how we're feeling and everything else, and to our appointment with our doctors and have a two-way conversation, not where you're sitting there and being lectured to by the doctor, but you're exchanging information, talking about the symptoms and what the possible causations could be. So once again, you're right. We maybe need to reframe how we move in our current medical system, because we know that right now in the healthcare systems that we have around the world, they're not going to change it just to make sure they're taking good care of their midlife women.
No. And the systems are so overrun. And we've now got an aging population on the planet. And that is often taking the significant part of the resources, because these people they're deconditioning and they take longer to recuperate and rehabilitate and get back home. The other thing that's important for us is that we're the next generation down from this. And so I think it's really important that as women, we start to look at our longevity. Like, you're looking at the fact it's not just about today and I've got pain or I've got a headache. It's about, okay, maybe acknowledging that you've got the pain and then saying, okay, why am I in this particular point? And then how do I move forward to prevent this from ongoing and reoccurring to the point that I actually then become debilitated with this?
That is such an excellent point, because we have a tendency, based upon what we've done before when we were in our 20s and 30s and maybe the 40s, to push back what those symptoms are and not deal with them because we're in the business of nurturing and taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
But there has to come a point in time in our lives where we decide to make ourselves the A1 priority, knowing that if we don't do that, then we won't be able to continue to be there for everyone else.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder, what is the one truth you wish that every woman over 40 could know about her body and her energy and her worth?
Yeah. Wow. I think the one true thing is for women to actually appreciate the gift that they are. Like, I think that if you could put yourself under a Christmas tree and wrap you up in gold paper with a beautiful red bow and treasure who you actually are, I think that would become the point of, how do I nurture this? How do I look after this? And it's a very different paradigm for women to think about, because women are very emotionally attached to their environments. They are caregivers. They want to feel loved. They want to feel that they're contributing.
Hi, I'm Lennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe.
So I think if women could just actually take that love back for themselves, and even though there might be a whole bunch of unniceness that they feel, or pain, or that really discomfortable sort of environment, I think that's where your secret truth sits. Because if you don't work through that part of it, you're not going to actually find out what you need to heal. And that's where I think, as a coach, I make the difference of, I want women to come and sit in that messiness of their emotions, because I think what happens is that something happens in life, we deal with this emotion, and then we try and band-aid it with alcohol, drugs, busyness, going to the gym, diets, all of this sort of thing, so that we push down that pain because we feel we don't have time to deal with that. And it's then that sort of continues to resurge. So that makes your perimenopause symptoms worse. It makes your sugar symptoms worse. So it puts women then more at risk of developing all of these other infections because all they're doing is their body is sitting in this chronic stress point of inflammation, of overdoing, and their nervous system doesn't know that they're safe. You know, that they're going, I've got to do this and I've got to do this.
Yeah,
So the message is not safe.
A lot of women don't understand that our brain does not disseminate right and wrong. It just reacts to how we react. So many times, what's going on between our two ears really governs how the rest of our body is going to act. So
Yes.
mindset is hugely important. Now, I know you have a wellness program called Eternal Her. And what
Yes.
makes that wellness program different from mainstream wellness programs for women?
I think I've worked really hard to try and work out what I needed. And something that I've just recently done and it's become very evident to me, is this risk of pre-diabetes or insulin resistance, because I think that is an underlying driver a lot with stress. So for me, I've actually written the program so that it's actually looking at the physical point of where you're at, but also it then delves into sort of your emotional context. And I really want to take you back to where you are for yourself, what's important for you. And those secret little dreams that we do have of climbing Mount Everest or whatever it might be in the future, it's instead of going, oh my God, I would just love to do that. And it's okay, why not? Let's get together. Let's get this done. And actually be realistic in what you need to do. I just think your nervous system impacts you physically, it impacts you emotionally, and it impacts you spiritually. And like you say, it doesn't know that you're either running from a tiger or 100 emails. Like, it doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know that you're in the office safe and sound, or that you're out in the middle of the woods and you haven't eaten for 3 days and now there's a toothed tiger running after you. It doesn't know that. But you're still reacting exactly the same way.
That's right. A lot of women don't understand that piece and how important it is when it comes to your overall cortisol and what happens with your cortisol levels and how it can
Yeah.
health. And that's why I believe in a holistic approach when it comes to caring for women over 40, because it truly is a mind, body, spirit thing. It's not just about what you eat, the supplements that you take, and the exercise that you do. That's an important part of it. But
Yes.
just as important, the complement to that is your mindset, your
Yes.
factors, and all the other things emotionally and mentally. And they're all interrelated. It becomes a interesting continuum because it isn't working. It's like a domino effect. It really, by the time you start exhibiting the pain, you're further down that journey. Prior to that, if you're a woman getting ready to become 40, or maybe you're 35 or whatever, and you're just beginning to think about the kinds of things you need to proactively do to age well, begin to take a look at what are your stress factors. What's your lifestyle like? What's going on in your life? Who are the energy vampires? Who drains your energy? All those kinds of things, which you would think, what does that have to do with my health? It has everything to do, because by the time you get to the point at 40 and beyond where stress is interesting, even though in midlife our cortisol levels go up, we know this, it also happens to be a very stressful time in life, period. Personally. And then you add the things that are going on in the world, especially right now, you got a triple whammy going on. So all the more reason to figure out what can you do to begin to help the body support you. And one of the things I think is really important is that we stop living like we're still 30 years old. Maybe not in terms of what we wear and the makeup that we do, but the kinds of pressure and stresses that we put on ourselves nonstop that we used to have when we were younger. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, when you created Eternal Her, what were you thinking about in terms of what you felt a woman would need, especially when you're integrating the whole idea of your science background to the stuff you've been doing?
Yeah.
Love.
I think because I know that there is so much information on the internet, like there is, and I think we're all very good researchers, but I think that there's the Dr. Google type thing is very prevalent. I see that in the emergency department. And I think there's some misinformation sometimes, or it's confusing, or For you as the individual, everything's very cookie cutter. And that's where I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I have lived in this life for so long and seen people go, but I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And I'm like, yeah, but what about this? As your estrogen drops and your progesterone drops, and like you say, your cortisol becomes more sensitive. When we're dropping our estrogen, our ability and our insulin sensitivity deteriorates as well. So we retain sugar much more than what we would have done in our 20s. And I think the thing is that when you read the internet, people go, oh, I'll just do this diet, the trends in the diets and things like that, which for women in perimenopause, and depending on where you're living and how stressed you are in your state of life, can be almost detrimental to you rather than taking a step back. So I think from my perspective, I was just looking at it saying, I think sometimes we just need someone to hold our hand. You don't need someone to tell you what to do, but they can guide you. And I'm somebody who's very much open to having these conversations and saying, you know what, if I don't know the answer, I'll go look for it for you. Because I think that we can't possibly know everything. And I get a bit cranky with some of the wellness training because it's all very much just do this and it's 12 weeks and you don't really see anyone or you don't interact with the same person. So A, you don't develop a rapport with that person. B, I think that there's a disconnection even within the training programs in some way. And that's where I just personally, as a person, like to have that connection with my clients. Like, I just think, because at the end of the day, they're entrusting you to help them. And that's a real privilege to be able to be in that position. And I think if I had someone like, I really want to hike, like I really do want to do Mount Everest, not necessarily to the summit or anything like that, but I was in Bali just recently and was just hiking doing a sunset volcano hike. There was only one other man that was in his 50s, similar to me, and everybody else was in their 20s and early 30s. So the pace was much faster. And actually, when I came down, I twisted my ankle and I ended up breaking my ankle and my finger. And it's just really made me realize that I can do this, but I need to do it in my time under my circumstances. And that's the empowerment that I want to provide women, is to say, my motto now has become educate, empower, and then embody. So it's that 3-step process of, you don't know what you need. You've got to go away and experiment, and you've got to go and fall off the cliff sometimes. But then if you've got someone to hold your hand, and then you go, this has become really important. What do I do now? How do we tweak this? So it's centering to your life specifically.
I so agree with that because every single person is different. And there is many different reasons for why you're feeling the way you're feeling in
Yeah.
menopause, postmenopause, whatever you want to call it. There is just as many reasons for it or causes for it as there are women. It's that different. And the way our current healthcare system is right now, it's truncated. They have protocols and they want to put you within those protocols. And that's why it's so important for you to understand what your choices are, and also to understand that you're not alone and you don't have to fit into the cookie cutter. In fact, most of the times you're not going to. No, you're not crazy. It's just that our healthcare system just is difficult for them to deal with multi-symptom over 40 females. So therefore, you're going to have to deal with yourself. And that's why the program that you have could possibly be a great answer for women who are looking for something different. What does transformation look like and feel like for a woman who goes through a program?
I think you would like to think that they feel there's that clarity, that sense of peace. And I think that there's also that sense of they finally feel that they're expressing themselves, even finding the voice and the confidence to be able to go, I'm okay to say no to whatever it is that I want to, or leave whatever the function is that they're at because they're not feeling it, but having that sense of, I have an option to do this. And I did that the other day at a networking event because I wasn't feeling it. I was a bit tired and I went, this isn't my theme. And when there was a break, I just quietly left, and I was very happy and contented with that. And I just realized that I'd got to a point where I knew I could discern who I want to surround myself with, who gives me energy, and how my energy changes. And I think that's part of that transformation. It's part of that, okay, I've got a clearer picture of who I am, how I want to dress, how you want to present yourself to the world. I think that there's that sense of calm and peace to go, yeah, this is who I am. And I think as women, we should be doing this. Like,
Absolutely.
we need to be celebrating ourselves and one another.
Celebrating ourselves, learning to love who we are right now in this moment in time, because we're always a work in progress. I always tell folks I'm an 80-20 girl. 80% of the time, I'm going to do my personal best and do what I can and whatever it is I'm doing. 20% of the time is okay, no such thing as perfection, at least not for human beings. But I have to tell you, Sharon, your program, I know is going to help a lot of people. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, go ahead and click on the link in the profile that explains more about Sharon's programs. And also, you can get a chance to get to know her even more so on her social media. Sharon, thank you so much for being on the V.I.B.E Living podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Glennis. It was just beautiful. I loved the conversation.
I loved talking with you too. Plus, I love your accent. I'm one of those people, I watch a lot of Aussie television programs all the time.
Do you? Yes.
Yeah, through, not Tubi has it too, but Acorn TV. And
yeah.
So it's really interesting because sometimes you have to have an ear because there's accents to us anyway. There's accents within the accents, but accents with everything he says. That's because I listen to all those Aussie programs.
And we're much more relaxed.
Let me tell you, it's so funny. I was watching a Canadian broadcast the other day, and they were having to work in conjunction with other Americans. And one of the first things they talked about was the cowboy attitude that Americans have, just come in and shoot it up and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty much what's going on here right now. All the reason why we as women over 40 need to take extra special good care of who we are and to stay zen and to have people like Sharon Nielsen on your team. Thanks so much for being here. And thank you to all of you to listen to the podcast. I truly appreciate it. Please comment and share the podcast with someone that you know that's at that midlife point, whether it's midlife or like me, way over 60, and in the process of wanting to live a V.I.B.E life, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered. Thanks so much for listening. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget the V.I.B E. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B E Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.